Kevin McGary. Kevin is the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation of California. The Frederick Douglass Foundation is committed to providing conservative political advocacy to the education and empowerment of communities of color and urban centers on the proper role of government, and to partner with the like-minded conservative organizations to ensure maximum freedom, liberty, and justice. May I introduce to you Kevin.
Good morning, all. Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with like-minded people about something so much a part of us, which is the whole life issue. Who would have ever imagined that we, after having documents like the Bible, like the Declaration of Independence, like the Constitution, who would ever imagine that we would have to have rallies like this to stand up for the most basic principle of humanity, and that's life? But yet here we are, and we have to continue to fight for just basic justice. This is an amazing time that we're in, when we have to come together to stand up for the cries of the unborn who merely just want to exist. This is, the actual definition of justice is to allow someone else to merely exist side by side with us. And with that said, our cause here today is for justice. This is what this movement is about. It's a justice movement. It's real justice. The fact is life is the foundational, fundamental principle and tenet of justice. Justice begins in the womb. This is where it begins. I love Dr. Martin Luther King, who says that injustice anywhere leads to injustice everywhere. I'm paraphrasing a bit on that. But fundamentally, if we ignore the right of the unborn in the womb, and we join these radical movements that are terrorizing neighborhoods and turning over cars and doing these things as they reject life, then fundamentally we are unjust, and those organizations and agencies are unjust agencies. So the justice movement is fundamentally a life movement. So why do we have to, why are we here now? We have basically documented atrocities like Gosnell, baby part harvesting, taking place under the guise of Planned Parenthood. And I have to ask you, is this justice? When we see things like, when we see things that would make Joseph Mengele blush under the guise of Planned Parenthood, is this justice? The reality is we have as well candidates that are running for president of the United States that actually support and uphold Planned Parenthood as reasonable organizations. One of those candidates actually received Margaret Sanger Awards. She lauds and applauds Margaret Sanger's, even though we know it's well documented the atrocities that have happened with baby part harvesting and all of the others. We also have a leading senatorial candidate that targets people for merely investigating the atrocities that happen within Planned Parenthood. So the question for us is, what do we do? If we're standing for justice, if we're standing for righteousness, if we're standing for principles of life, what do we do in this day and time? Here's what we do. We continue to fight for life. We continue to fight for real justice. We continue to pray and hold rallies like this across the United States. And we remind our family and our friends and our neighbors that if they are all about real justice, Justice begins in the womb. You cannot stand for justice if you do not acknowledge it where it begins. So any vote to empower anyone that supports the scourge that is Planned Parenthood is a vote for evil and injustice. Period. End of story. I want to ask you all to say 3 times with me one simple phrase. Justice begins in the womb. Justice begins in the womb. Justice begins in the womb. Fools be damned. Thank you.